Welcome to the Meta, episode 25, end of season. Thank you for joining. If this is the first time you've joined, if you're joining from listening or watching this in the past, thank you for coming back again. Anyway, what is the show? So the show is basically looking at the competitive, which means primarily the top of either divisions or any of the leagues, or the top divisions in Kyber 1 primarily. Anyway, looking at the competitive GAC meta once or twice a season. I give my thoughts on sort of where it's at, where it's going, what's happened, what's influencing it, what's changing, the characters, the ships, the playstyles, blah blah blah, the whole deal. Why should you care about my opinion? That's up to you, of course. I personally am a pretty decent GAC player. I have like 10 million or so GP. I usually play in the top 50 or top 100. 4 to 4.1 thousand, 4,100 skill rating since the changes. But really most important for this particular show is that I watch an enormous amount of GAC fights, mainly because I want to improve my own skills. Talking about GAC fights, let's start this video here. Just something in the background until I want to show some data. Anyway, and also for Grand Arena Science, I put a lot of those videos, I link them with some description and ranking and banners and all of that on the Grand Arena Science website, so other people can get some help in GAC as well. So, anyway, that aside, let's talk about the meta right now. Where we are. We're in, I think, the best, I've said this a few times now, but it continues to get better, in my opinion. Ever since the Starkiller Marquees were introduced, I felt that the meta has improved and improved and improved, and it's still improving. Iden, Wampa, more people getting the Marquees up to 7 stars, which makes a huge difference on what you can do with characters. More Omicrons for existing characters. It's really an awesome place to be from a GAC lover's perspective, I think. So the last part of this last season was a great encapsulation of that. Like there's so much changed so quickly, and in some cases so publicly in the last couple of weeks of the season in terms of different teams, things changing throughout the course of a week in particular, because that's when people lock their rosters. So you can change your play style, or you can change your teams a bit with the existing roster. Well, you can change your teams a lot, but oftentimes some specialized or certain counters, both offensive or defensive, you're trying to stop something. You need to change your mods a bit or adjust them around or something. And one of the things I've seen that doesn't really bother me, I was about to say bother, but that's not true. It doesn't bother me. It just, there's ways I think that people can play that can save them resources, money, and give them a better chance at winning their GAC rounds. That's what I think I called it the arms race to your wallet. Very eloquent, huh? Anyway, so what does it actually mean? There's a couple of matchups that illustrate it pretty well. Everything versus Lord Vader and Iden versus Wampa. I want to use the Iden versus Wampa one, as I think it's a picture perfect example. I'm using Coruscant Underworld Police in this counter. Cool. Anyway, oh yeah, this is a video by Knights of Ni, whatever. Nice, I think Kyber 2 player. Got some interesting GAC combat. Good player. Anyway, so talking about Iden versus Wampa. Iden's a very good character, he's been out for a while, very strong on defense, requires very specific counter to beat, although there are quite a few of those counters you can use. But Wampa recently, with his Omicron, became by far the most popular counter against Iden, just because of the relative ease and high banners. So, how is this an example of the race to your wallet, the arms race to your wallet? There has been some amount of attention, I don't want to say a lot, on how to mod Wampa, specifically versus what Iden is doing. So let's say most people mod Wampa for health. It's the easiest setup. Defense is also great. In some cases, I think defense is, in many cases, defense is better, but more difficult to get those mods for many people, so they go with health instead. Either way, they're fine. But there's also some discussion around, oh, should you mod your Wampa for tenacity? Some people have said, oh, just throw tenacity on your Wampa, it'll be better. It's categorically wrong. There's only one counter I know of where tenacity is helpful or could save you a match, a win, and that is versus Iden, who is spec'd for potency or is modded for potency. So let's look at that from a numbers perspective, right? So if two characters, their potency and tenacity are the same, they have effectively 100% or not 100. I think there's a base 15% chance to resist, 5 or 15. It's 15. Was it 85%? Was it 5? Anyway, without this small percentage, that is the highest chance they have to apply debuffs. So if you want to get out of it, if you have plus 50 more tenacity than them, their chance is 50% reduced. This goes until you get 100% more tenacity than the other character. At that point, it is impossible to apply a debuff. It's 0% chance to get a debuff applied. So people are saying, oh, well, your Wampa, you should mod in for tenacity, so you can guarantee that you're going to win versus Iden. Just looking at the math, they both have about 50% tenacity potency. Wampa gets 100% bonus from his Omicron tenacity, and the way that Iden's skill works is she first does damage, and whenever Wampa takes damage, he gains 30% stacking tenacity, and then she applies her debuffs. So Wampa has effectively, versus Iden, 130% more potency or tenacity than his base displayed number. So even if you modded Iden for like 100% plus, she has 150% potency. Wampa is going to have 180% tenacity with Iden's first hit. So Iden has like a 60-70% chance of landing her debuff. But if Wampa actually mods for tenacity, puts a tenacity cross in a tenacity set or something like that, probably with very little effort, you're going to outpace the vast majority of Iden's modding in the game, and you'll have no problem whatsoever. Now, what is the actual benefit of modding? Stick with me. This may seem like a rambling explanation, but you could probably read and get to the summary faster than I'm speaking. But what is the benefit of going down this path anyway? So let's say you mod you're one of those. Well, it doesn't matter either side, really. If you're going down the potency versus tenacity path, you're either planning on playing against somebody who doesn't pay attention to those stats, sort of by definition a worse player, or at least he's not going to stand a good chance to beat you if he's not even checking potency and tenacity. And who cares about beating worse players? I don't think many people. You're trying to get better. You're not trying to beat the people that are worse than you. Or you are looking to specifically use your Wampa to counter only items. At some roster levels, I understand this is a very valid reason. So maybe if you know they always place Iden on defense, and you have to use your Wampa, you don't have Beskar Mando, you don't have Padme, you don't have Bad Batch. Like, if you don't have any of those, well, there's more teams also, General Grievous, whatever. But you don't have any of those, and you have to use your Wampa, then there's some valid validity in putting it up. But otherwise, you're racing towards a goal that is so easily avoidable. Logically, it doesn't make sense to go down that route. So, in terms of how this relates to racing an arms race to your wallet, spending resources and time and effort and mods and taking mods away from other characters who actually have more value from tenacity or potency, depending on which side of the street you're on here, it's just a waste. Use other teams. Like the core part of GAC and the meta we have right now is flexibility, and there are multiple teams to beat every other team. Yeah, I mean, there's even multiple well, I think I get down there even further. There's multiple non-GL teams to beat every GL, so with a good chance of success too. So keep this in mind. Don't spend all these resources. Don't have this arms race that is popular at the time because some streamers are doing it or your guild is doing it or something like that. Think about what it's costing you and what you're doing it for. Why make your Wampa tenacious when it hurts him in virtually all the other counters? Why make your Iden so heavily stacked with potency if it hurts her, stopping the other teams that are more common anyway? Like talking about this a little bit. So if Idens want to beat Wampa, they give Iden potency and they take out Magma Trooper. Because Magma, with all the debuffs that Wampa applies, Magma gains a huge amount of turn meter and goes all the time, and he double taps on basic. 2 counterattacks for Wampa, lots of turn meter. It's just a chain that Wampa eats up and loves it. Like if you really want to stop Wampa, mod for damage, the whole team for damage. Don't put Magma Trooper in there. Put 2 tanks, both Shore, because the expose from Shore Trooper is unavoidable and unresistible. So it'll still land on Wampa. And he has a lot of health, generally, so that helps. So put Shore and Stormtrooper in there, and make sure your Death Trooper and Snow Trooper have a lot of damage. You can kill Wampa that way. The most health modded Wampa, maybe not as much defense modded Wampas, because you reduce the impact of Stormtrooper's basic and expose, and the general mitigation of defense versus health mods are much better. But anyway, there's better ways to mod Iden if you want to stop Wampa counters, as long as you are accepting the fact that, yes, if you go up against some Idens, or as the Wampa owner, you have to accept the fact that if you go up against some Idens with hugely stacked potency, you say thank you very much, you throw in one of the other counters. Usually there's like 4 options. Beskar Mando, Bad Batch Shaq, Padme Bad Batch, or just regular Bad Batch, Darth Revan, General Skywalker, or GG. Those are sort of premium counters, but the other ones are not nearly as in use as much. There's lots of other ways. So I'm just saying, don't participate in these types of races. I'll talk about the Lord Vader one a little bit later. Don't fall into this trap of, when you're not sure what to do, follow what other people do, or relic more, or investing more in mods is great, but you don't have to do that with every single team just because it's a fad. Go to GG and look for the counters to that team. It's easy to see the data. Come to a Discord server that talks about Grand Arena stuff. The Grand Arena Science one is one, but there's a lot of other great ones out there. A lot of awesome ones. Or go to Grand Arena Science and just put in the characters that you want to search for, and click on this little meta report button, and it'll open up the GG stuff. That's way easier. That's what I do all the time. Anyway, that's my little rant. I'll have more rants today, but don't fall into this trap of an arms race to really no end, unless you really have to because of your roster size. I have no comments in that regards. Yeah, don't think of it like Arena. This is not Arena. GAC is not Arena. You have so many choices, so many teams. Yes, smaller rosters, it's definitely more difficult, and you're more stuck with certain teams. But I think even at the smaller roster size, I know at the smaller roster size, there are many ways you can use your teams, not just against only one team. With GLs, this is more complicated for sure, but against non-GL teams, you have a lot more flexibility. Yeah. Yep, I didn't say this, but I should have bzzz wrong. We have so many options. Yeah, so let me show you a little bit about these non-GL counters. I'm going to go through every GL. This is just in GAC 25. I'm not even going into all the other options that are available here. But these are non-GL only. I have the non-GL flight. For Lord Vader, everyone's favorite. I love Lord Vader. I think he's one of the best GLs we have in the best units, offensive units we have in the game right now. More about him later. But anyway, Fennec just destroys him. 100 attempts, 75 wins. Many people don't know how to play. I'm sorry to say they haven't practiced or they go against something I don't expect. Jedi Master Kenobi, yeah, this is the one I'm talking about. JMK and Cat, you cannot beat. With any, there's some teams that have won here and there, but really, it's not going to work. Like, Padme Cat is like the only option you have for some reliability, but it's very difficult. Sith Eternal Emperor, GG crafts all over him. Wampa can do it sometimes. CLS can do it sometimes. Troopers very rarely, but you have options. Jedi Master Luke. Some comps, Gas just curb stomps. Other ones, GG, Gas. Those are the most popular ones. Rey. Starkiller just crafts all over her. Gas also does it. Very many Starkiller options. So Starkiller and Gas, basically. Mon Mothma can do it as well, but again, not seen very often. You have to have very high mods. JKR, or I mean, Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, JKR and Vasti, JKL. Oh, Mace fits great in this team instead of Vesta Lashan. Mace is a very nice fit in this team too, for equally good success rates. Actually better, I think. Emperor Palpatine Starkiller setup. Troopers against, again, this is one comp here with old Ben. GG does great. Mirrors do great. Maul does pretty good. Troopers again. Aura Bounty Hunters can do okay depending on the comp. Anyway, all I'm trying to say here, yeah, these are different Starkiller comps. I was talking in Discord earlier. We're having a discussion about Starkiller tanks. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is, even at the GL level, you have multiple counter options that aren't GLs. Below the GL level, you have so many more. This is the biggest reason, I talked about this last episode, last season, this is the biggest reason why people see people lose fights, is because they bring in the wrong team. That's it. They have other teams that are better in their roster. This is not the only reason, of course, but this is by far the most common reason. And it's frankly a shame, because you don't have to do that. Make use of other tools and save yourself, or gain yourself the crystals from winning that round. And Kyber won 700 crystals, I think. It was huge. Okay. Let's go and talk about playstyles. Make your playstyle one of research. Take 30 seconds per fight and go check to see what the popular high success rate teams are. So what are playstyles doing now? What's happening with playstyles? So one thing that is becoming very noticeable is an increased focus on offense. The majority, more than half, of Kyber 1 in most of their fights are no longer doing the 4 GLs on defense. And everybody in Kyber 1 has Starkiller, so if you're not having 4 GLs on defense, it means you have 3, effectively at least 3 or 4 on offense, with Starkiller is basically equal of half the GLs, more or less. And some very, very crazy, weird teams. And I've been talking about offense being very important since the start of, well, for a long time if you have chatted with me. But since the start of the show, I've mentioned that many times. I don't know why people don't focus more on offense, because, surprise, if you reduce your RNG and you increase your banners, you're going to win more. Basic math. Not that big of a surprise. No, I did just say surprise. And it's been awesome what's been going on in the meta in terms of creativity too. I want to show you, I had the leaderboard up here. Let's look at some of the top players of the leaderboard and see what they're doing on offense. So, Hawkeyes, he's ahead by a good margin, I think, right now. Although people are catching up. Yeah, 3 people at 4,300 now. It's very close. So, his offense here, he went up against a cheese player. Cheese, I don't want to say necessarily. The guy didn't place any GLs. So I guess easy to predict, he didn't keep any GLs. Here he used no GLs against no GLs, so they set all their GLs on defense. Well, starting out, this is not proving my point. Round 3, okay, so there's 1 GL, 2 GLs, 3 GLs. Yeah, so he kept half of his for offense. Let's go look at another player here. From Ray's Anatomy. I like the name of that guild. So, Wampa, 1 GL, 2 GLs. Okay, about half. Let's see again. And yeah, look at all these people. Iden for offense. It's great against CLS and so many other teams. Iden is not on defense so much these days. Wampa versus Iden. So 1 GL here. Alright. Well, I will say that I did a script. Yeah, 2 GLs here. 3, 4. Anyway, you go. I chose the wrong ones, I guess, as examples. But more than half of them kept more of their GLs for offense than they did putting them on defense. And I think this is a trend we will see continuing as people are trying to get more points and guarantee themselves a win, especially as these more creative counters are chosen. And talking about counters, I think many people have seen this one, but maybe they don't know the whole history of how it arrived. It starts with Darth Revan. So, this is sort of what happened around the time that the defense changes went into effect, like 6 months or so ago. A little bit before that, but Dark Trooper became farmable for people, and so they had it more often. Dark Trooper was made the Imperial troopers be able to counter Darth Revan teams very easily. Then you started, you still had to outspeed Darth Revan, but Piet naturally is faster than Darth Revan, so not that. I think he's faster. I think he's 1 or 2 speeds faster. Speed faster. So he became sort of the de facto counter to Darth Revan. Then Talon came out and gave Darth Revan plus 20 speed. That became difficult. But Darth Talon's not a great fit in the Darth Revan team. Piet can still outspeed the team. And still easy to get around, really. And even if you didn't outspeed him, you could still get around the Darth Revan teams. Just needed a pre-taunt in there with Shore. So that whole Talon thing is mostly for like non-relic Talons, non-7-star Talons. And it came and went. It's still used in some places, but at the higher GP sizes, roster sizes, it definitely is not that popular anymore. But Nest started going back in there. And this became quite popular because it's very difficult to beat a Darth Revan team with troopers with Nest in there. You can do it, but the success rates are very low. You have to get very lucky with a big hit from like Piet or Stark maybe, or Range, depending on how you mod. It just doesn't work very well. And people oftentimes, if you put Stark in there, you're almost guaranteed to lose because the TM reduction from Nest. Long story short, Nest sort of threw troopers out the window. At the same time, people with Nest in there, is there really a need for Malak, or Darth Malak? No. You can put Darth Malak with other teams. Love this animation, Star Killer. You can put Darth Malak with other teams. So where do you put him? Interesting ones. You put Darth Malak with like Darth Maul, perhaps. Or even throw in Best of the Fallen from the Darth Revan team into the Darth Maul team. But it's not great, doesn't hold up really well. Easy to counter by a number of teams that are lesser value. So you can put Darth Revan into or Darth Malik, excuse me, you can put him into a Traya team or something like that. Sort of shuts down troopers there too. Not guaranteed, but it makes it more complicated because the counterattacks lower their health, and then when Darth Malik is triggered and does his big attack, if he is triggered, then he's more likely to kill one of the troopers. Anyway, it's not a 100% thing, but it can work a little bit. And then Starkiller came out. I mean, obviously that's why Darth Revan started having Nest in there a little bit, because you had Talon in there to try and speed him up. Again, stopping troopers was the goal. And Starkiller came out, and Darth Malik started going over to the Rey teams to stop the EP Starkiller teams, because Malik, his unique, stops a Sith from getting turn meter, bonus turn meter. Which is sort of funny, like we're back to something that was around back when the EP Darth Vader counter to Rey was popular. But you can actually still use Vader. You don't need turn meter. You can use Vader-led Starkiller and do effectively the same thing. This is it's not caught on as much yet, popularity-wise. It will in the next few months, next few seasons, next few weeks. I don't know, because it's not as stupid easy, I guess, as the EP MJ counter, but effectively it's the same, and you're actually less likely to use people because you have some more flexibility in the abs, in your other characters. I'm going to start this over from the beginning because I'm going to keep talking. So, what happens then if you have Vader now that's going to lead the team? Or you don't have EP and Mara Jade in the Starkiller team, basically. What do you do with these characters? And with Wampa and Iden, sort of the battle there going on, and knowing that Magma Trooper versus Wampa is a terrible choice, because Magma Trooper just gives Wampa a free win, effectively. Then this other team came up. I think many people have seen this on Arnold's stream. And actually, I think he just made a video about this as well. So it's this really cool dynamic where you put Mara Jade and Magma Trooper under a Lord Vader team with Maul, because at the beginning of the fight, Mara Jade gives Useful Pawn or something like that. It's a debuff to all the whole team, because Emperor Palpatine isn't the lead. And Magma Trooper gains 70% turn meter when he gets a debuff the first time each turn. So he goes, and with his special he triggers Maul's unique. Maul goes with his special, and then Lord Vader goes, and then Maul goes again with 5 stacks and unloads all over your Bounty Hunters, Jedi Master Luke team. So it sort of shuts down the Fennec counter, specifically the Fennec counter. But it's amazing. Like, this is one of the coolest, the whole pattern of how one change from new characters obviously, but one change to try and stop a single team, adding Nest to the Darth Revan team, sort of has this whole knock-on effect as people think, oh, well, I can't use this character here, maybe I'll use it here. Oh, well, this could go here, oh, then this. It's awesome. Like, this is really the golden age of GAC. So far, could get better. It could get worse, too. Anyway, I talked about all this, how the mechanic works here, if you want to pause and read on this. All that said, as I was talking about earlier, don't get caught up in trying to build this team. I mean, it's not hard to build. Just throw in those characters. Really nothing special. But don't get caught up if this is like an armed race thing, like, oh, I want to build this team. I'm going to go relic my Mara Jade real quick, so I can get Starkiller, and so I can put Mara Jade in the Vader team, so it shuts down the Fennec counter. Well, you can still shut down sort of Fennec and Troopers both. You can still just use like SLKR, Watt, and Night Sisters, and you'll beat it very easily. Really, in some ways, you can beat easier because Magma Trooper helps out Supreme Leader Kylo Ren and his stacking. So, I mean, yeah, talk about Watt. Really be careful. I mean, I love the whole theory crafting and trying out different teams and finding weird things that work that stop something in particular your opponent tends to do. That's great. You get a huge advantage in GAC. Just don't chase after it at the expense of other things that will give you a bigger advantage. That's my point. So, playstyles. Let's move on to playstyles. Oh yeah, this is the playstyles that I normally refer to. You can look at those if you want. I'm not really talking about them in particular, except in general terms, like saying offense is becoming more popular these days. So some of these are the same as last episode. These are playstyles that I see being developed. Flexibility. This is the really important one. Because of the shrinking of strong defense options, flexibility is extremely important to know things that you can use on offense to beat a wider variety of teams, and to put things on defense that take advantage of the main flaw that most people have that causes them to lose matches where they just don't check. So if you put a team in there that's a little similar, but not exactly, but you know it's going to counter a lineup that they frequently use, throw it on in there, probably a 50% chance they're not going to check, not going to do the basic 30 seconds of validation, and they stand a higher chance of losing. I mean, really that's what it comes down to. Try to surprise your opponent. That gives you the best chance of winning or causing a hold or for them to lose banners or something like that. Or they just make a misplay. That also happens. And this is also part of the issue now with so many potential options, especially at the higher roster sizes. There are so many possibilities to do things. You really could scout for an hour and not know everything your opponent will do. There's also the thing to look at, like if you're scouting an opponent, if they're worse than you, if they're not as prepared as you, you have a better chance of winning. But in that case, does scouting really make that big of a difference? If you're scouting an equal skill, time available opponent, roster similarity opponent, then are you both going to make strange changes and you're back in the middle where who knows what's going to happen? It's something to think about in terms of how you spend your time. I think it's better to spend your time coming up with creative teams that either you saw once and you find really interesting or you found while you're looking through GAC histories. I think that's a better use of time than scouting a particular opponent. Of course you want to check your opponent, key speeds for certain matchups, spend 5 minutes or something. But I think it's better to find more creative teams than to focus purely on a single opponent, in my opinion. Let's move on to fleet meta. Holy shit, really. Damn. Now it's valid for people to say GAC is decided by fleet. I think that's totally valid. Because this is going to be a mess. And I think it'll also make people more, my first point here, I think it'll make people more likely to focus on offense in the character zones. Because really, why fight so hard in the character zones? Or why spend so much time or use a bunch of maybe not sure counters and in the end just lose because you sucked at fleets or you made a bad choice in fleets? Because guaranteed that's going to happen a lot. The fleets now are going to be so important. Even if you have all, there's 8 capital, that's terrible, I don't even know, 8 capital ships? But not really 8 fleets. Okay, I've got to look how many capital ships there are. That's terrible that I don't know off the top of my head. That was the filter, right? Capital ship. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9, but 8. Effectively 8 fleets. Yeah, obviously, GAC expert right here. 8 fleets that I care about then. Really no margin for error. And if you have a planned 2-shot, Executor or something like that, double extra no margin for error. And this is where I think you're going to start to see people really get angry, get frustrated when they put their strong fleets on defense, like Negotiator and Malevolence and Executor, and their opponent does the same, and then it just comes down to RNG on who gets a lucky 2-shot or a lucky 1-shot. Oy, 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 oy. I think that's just a bad choice. I think you should very carefully think about what you're doing in fleet. Save your good, not all your good fleets, but save like 3 very strong fleets can beat almost any other 3 fleets. talking about strong fleets, I think Empire is going to be the most problematic fleet for many people. I say this because Executor, again, at different roster sizes, of course, makes a huge difference. At the top end, the competitive end of Kyber, I guess, most everybody has 7-star echelon, and 7-star echelon versus, assuming your pilots are at their appropriate relic level, versus 7, like maximum, fully 8 or 9 relic level pilots. For the Executor, it's better to use the TIE echelon in the final of your fleet than it is to use a mirror. It's crazy. It's more reliable using TIE echelon. Wonderful, but crazy. So keep that in mind. I think more people are going to be having problems because they put all their strong fleets on offense and are stuck trying to clean up other fleets. And Empire is going to be this fleet where either it's on defense, you can't really negotiator it. You can definitely malevolence it, but then you're using malevolence against Empire. You can rebel it, depending. I don't think so after the next conquest is over. Rebel, I don't think is going to be quite as strong, but still could work. You can negotiator it, or executor it, of course. I mean, negotiator doesn't work. Or you save it for offense. You can kill negotiators quite easily. You can kill rebels pretty well. Very easily, actually, rebels. So I think many people aren't familiar with what the fleet does, especially with the TIE Interceptor, the new ship. And even at non-maxed, it's great. So I think this is going to be a spoiler ship. And if I were you, and I am me, I'm practicing with my, especially in this coming beginning of the season, I'm going to be practicing a lot with my Empire fleet. I think it's going to be a key fleet. You can beat Malevolence with the Empire fleet. Slightly different lineup, doesn't depend as much on the TIE Interceptor, but very doable. And keeping in mind, I think some people are going to be, I'm just flowing through my notes here as things pop into my head. So something that's going to be interesting too is how the Rebels are going to play sort of a pivotal role on offense. Because Negotiator, if you set your Negotiator on defense, you're probably not going to be putting the Imperial TIE Bomber with it, and that makes it more vulnerable to Rebels. However, Rebels are great cleanup versus Executor, you have to go there. And for those people who choose to set the no tank Executor lineup, which is very hard to beat first shot with any other team rather than Rebels, what are you going to do? It's a fascinating question. I think fleet it's going to be very interesting, very messy, but very interesting. So, character meta. What's happening in the character meta? We talked about Wampa and Iden in this arms race that I think is a waste of resources. Really think about the purpose. Like, why are you... I just did a little Italian thing. Lived too long in Montreal. Why are you relicking, gearing a character? Like, make sure you know what you're using them for. But Wampa has a lot of other targets. Essentially, any team that cannot do a huge burst damage or put tenacity down and then land further debuffs, or unresistible debuffs. Darth Revan Fear, or Malak, his Drain, Jedi Training Rey with her healing immunity. There's a lot of teams, though, that Wampa can kill. Look at the GG history, like teams to attack with Wampa. You'll find some interesting stuff in there. I think the only time when Wampa won't be used is if you're up against a defensive heavy player who only places GLs effectively, like all 6 or 7, GLs plus Starkiller on defense. Then it's possible that you're not going to have a team that Wampa can kill easily. But in that case, either you'll demolish that player or you're in a slap fight and you're planning on doing multiple hits, multiple shots, many teams, in which case, of course, Wampa will come into play. So in almost all situations, Wampa will be useful, is my point. So talking about Lord Vader a bit, I personally think that Lord Vader is much better on offense than he is on defense, although I think we're going to see this Iden team, especially now that Arnold made a video on it. Not Iden, excuse me. Mara Jade and Magma Trooper in Lord Vader teams on defense. But assuming you don't go that route, what are you going to do with Lord Vader? I personally think he's the best offensive unit in the game. And if you're doing that, you probably don't need Watt, because some people are putting... sorry, let me back up again. If you're using on defense, if you're putting Lord Vader and you're putting Maul in there, you don't need Watt to trigger Maul because you have Magma and Mara Jade. So where does Watt go? Are you using him on offense with Sith Eternal to kill Rey? You can. It's more complicated with all the JTRs in there, but still very possible. Like, nothing's stopping you. Just makes it a little less sure. Or do you put your Watt on defense? Maybe with C? That's an interesting team I've seen a few times. I think very interesting to see how Watt is going to play, because some of the typical places that you normally see him are not as... You're not seeing those teams quite as commonly anymore these days. So very, very curious how this whole thing will develop over time with Watt. This Lord Vader thing I talked about. Mace is an awesome character, but offensive only. I think he's crap on defense. The AI doesn't target the shatter-pointed characters very well, but he's great in the Starkiller team on offense, Qui-Gon Jinn on offense. I mentioned earlier Jedi Knight Revan with Jedi Knight Luke, and put Mace instead of Bastilla, which is cool because depending on your roster size and everything, Bastilla lead is a good team versus other teams as well, like the GG Nuke team, although usually you want JKR on that team. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is nice to have Bastilla free, and Mace is very good in that team. Sort of a force taunt that's quite handy. The whole Starkiller and Rey thing is fascinating. Oh, one thing I mentioned, one of the reasons why even Starkiller is not... I mean, right now it's currently popular versus JTR, or versus Rey, but you put JTR in that Rey team, and with all the turn meter that Starkiller generates, the Emperor Palpatine Mara Jade version of Starkiller generates, Rey's evasion mastery, Jedi Knight Rey, or Jedi Training Rey's evasion mastery just spikes through the roof. And it's so easy to get timeouts. So that's sort of why I think you're going to start seeing a shift back to Lord Vader in Starkiller lineups. We're talking about Starkiller here versus a very easy Qui-Gon Jinn team. But anyway, I think you'll start seeing Vader leading more Starkiller teams when used to counter Rey, in particular with JTR in there. That's a fascinating little thing. Another character that's been around for a while, but more and more popularity now, is veteran smuggler Han. He's great in the Dash team. He is actually pretty good on the Rey team. I've seen that to try and slow down some of the Starkiller teams. He's great with the JTR lead and droids. There's a lot of places you see him. He's great in BAM teams. Mostly it's because of his double taps, stagger, TM reduction on basic. And also, not TM reduction, but stagger. And also because of the fact that he has an AoE ability block, which is amazing. And if he goes after IG-11, for instance, very high chance of it landing on everybody, which slows down a bunch of stuff. Like, that's a great character. Don't see him as much with veteran smuggler Chewbacca. They don't really work that well together in the meta right now. But he's a great character, and I think you'll continue to see more of him, especially as more and more people get Dash. Because he does great in the Dash, turn meter train, big mega hit all at once thing. So, what's coming in the future? We're only at 44 minutes. We might be less than our last one. I personally think that theory crafting is like the best it's been ever. So many options. But I'm worried how long it could possibly last. We haven't had a GL in ages. We have all the Inquisitors, and there's going to be the Grand Inquisitor coming. Almost certainly going to be a TW focused. Like I talked about last time, I think could be a better than GL's type of character, assuming you have the whole team. And then you also have 5 new characters that are coming, you know, the data mined packs and stuff. So is that going to be more on the GAC side? Is that the other faction for, you know, we're going to see a GL really soon, but it'd be weird to have a GL when you just have they've already sort of semi-announced the Grand Inquisitor. I don't know his stats or timing or anything like that, but, you know, he's coming. So I'm sort of thinking it's not going to be a GL as a near power creep. So what is the power creep going to become? Is it going to be, I think 7-star mods are coming before another GL. I sort of hope 7-star mods are coming and they give some way to influence ship stats. Because right now the only way to influence ship stats is relic levels. It's like back in the Stone Age, the beginning of the game, when you didn't have mods and you just had to relic your characters to make them better, which is terrible. It's so uninteresting. I think that's going to happen. That's going to happen. But it could be something else too. But I think there's definitely some power level increase coming soonish. Flexible roster lock. That's pretty awesome. Quality of life, huge for GAC. That's going to be very, very nice. I think it'll influence the way that people, well, for sure. I think it'll give people generally more, obviously it gives people more control, and generally they'll have better rosters, roster setups, mods in particular, for the GAC. So I expect, like, maybe not for the top few hundred players, it's going to be the same, but for competitive players with time, it's going to help them significantly to improve their game. Just 24 hours to play with stuff instead of one small time frame. And fleet, man, the future is fleet. That's why I think having 7-star mods or some other way to influence ship stats would be huge, given that how important fleet is in GAC. And it would actually make it interesting more than just a relic challenge or a rock, paper, scissors type of challenge. But who knows? I mean, we'll see. I'm pretty happy with GAC these days. I think the meta is amazing. Right at the end of the video, perfect timing. I think the meta is amazing. There's so many things to explore, to find out, to learn. People are coming up with really cool teams, and there's lots of options to kill any team. It's pretty awesome. I hope this show, thank you for sticking around for 50 minutes again, crikey. I hope you enjoyed it, learned something. If you have any questions or feedback, I'd love to hear it. I'm always interested in learning something new. I always learn. There's lots I have to learn. That's what I'm trying to say. Anyway, thanks for watching. Good luck with upcoming GAC. Cheers.